Acting Deputy President, sorry. Pursuant to order, I present the report of the Community Affairs References Committee on Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, together with the Hansard record of proceedings and documents presented to the committee, and move that the report be printed.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Against no. The ayes have it. Senator Siewert.
Thank you. I move that the Senate takes note of this report, and in doing so I say that with great pleasure. And I'd like to quote from Mrs de Young, who's the Secretary of Grandparents Raising Grandchildren in my home state of Western Australia, who said, This road grandparents are on is long, hard, tough, bumpy, painful, soul-destroying and exhausting. But much love, determination and courage is given by grandparents to raise healthy and happy grandchildren. This caring role has been pushed upon them by the inability of their children to care and take responsibility for the children. Grandparent carers need moral support, emotional support and financial support for everyone in the community to raise these grandchildren, so they are not a burden on the taxpayer but become role models in society in their adult lives. And I think that really helps to sum up a vast amount of what we were told during this inquiry. I'd like to express, first off, my deep admiration for the work, and the fact is I'm gobsmacked at the amount of work that grandparents and what they go through do, and still remain positive and support and loving of the grandchildren that they raise. I'd also like at this point to make sure that I acknowledge the work of Senator Dean Smith, who made this reference in the first place, who has been doggedly pursuing this issue and contributed hugely to the outcomes of this committee report. And because I always run out of time, I want to thank now the Secretariat for their hard work that they have put into this report. The report makes 18 recommendations. They're very detailed recommendations. One of the very first ones, and one of the issues that we very first raise, is the need for data and support. And you'd think that we were being boring here, but the first thing people have to know is we actually don't know how many grandparents raising grandchildren there are in this country. There are some that do actively seek support, and we sort of know about them, but we don't know, in fact, how many there are. And in fact, many grandparents are sometimes shamed that they're having to look after their grandchildren because of the circumstances, or they don't know about the supports, or in fact they don't want to seek supports. They want to, they think they can, or they want to do it on their own. The recommendations cover a wide range of issues because there are so many issues that are affecting grandparents. Issues like financial support and where people access information. Support for legal aid, because grandparents often can't get access to legal aid to represent themselves in the courts when they're trying to seek orders for their grandchildren. In areas of health, we thought the issues around Medicare cards and things like that were sorted, but we still received evidence around that. The need for mental health, need for counselling services. Often the children that come into grandparents' care are traumatised, either through the loss of parents or through other traumatic circumstances they've had in the home environment. One of the big issues is accommodation. Sometimes when grandchildren come into the lives of their grandparents have downsized. In fact, sometimes they've downsized because they're doing the grey nomads. They've bought a caravan or a big camper van and they're travelling around Australia, and all of a sudden they need to have the care of their grandchildren, which they do gladly, or they're in one-bedroom flats now. And we heard of a number of circumstances where grandparents raising grandchildren were raising them in one-bedroom flats still, with two or three grandchildren. And that situation cannot be allowed to continue. So we make a number of recommendations. I'm very pleased and happy to report that we have a consensus report. Community Affairs References Committee strives, don't always quite achieve it, but strives for consensus reports. And in this report that we have, just going back to the other recommendations that we think need to be considered, we've made a number of recommendations to the Australian government, to state and territory governments, and to the COAG process. Some things the states and territories can do straight away instead of waiting for the COAG process. They can do straight away. And one of the issues that we think is also important is to look at the number and placement of the grandparent advisors that are available through Centrelink. Almost overwhelmingly, the evidence was positive in terms of the support for grandparent carers, and the issue there is being able to access them. They're overworked. They sometimes aren't able to provide advice in a timely manner, so we're suggesting that there's a review carried out with a view to maybe providing some more. One of the big issues, and I will finish up because I want to provide other committee members the opportunity to speak to the report, in particular Senator Smith. One of the issues is grandparents raising grandchildren have found it difficult to access information. Sometimes they don't know where to start, and the support groups that have developed, as in the, for example, grandparents raising grandchildren in WA, there's many throughout Australia, provide invaluable support to grandparents. And sometimes it's just being there to listen and provide advice and to provide a social environment, because grandparents find themselves isolated from their peers because they're raising their grandchildren, which some of their peers aren't doing, so they become isolated. So some people just want the ability to be able to talk about the issues, be able to be with a group of people who understand what it's like to turn up as a grandparent with your grandchildren at school and be a generation separate to the other parents. Those are the sorts of issues that I think a lot of people don't actually realise happens. I think when they do, they understand it, but they don't actually realise what goes on for grandparents raising grandchildren. I commend the report to the Senate. I commend Senator Smith for doing so much work on it and bringing this referral, and encourage people to read the report and encourage governments around Australia to look at the recommendations and please take a sense of urgency to implementing the recommendations.
Thank you, Senator Siewert.